They asked me if I planned it. The prosecutor asked. The judge asked. The psychiatrist asks every month during our mandatory sessions. When did you decide to kill him, Elena? When did the thought first enter your mind? I tell them the truth, I don't know. There was no moment, no decision. It was more like erosion, like water wearing down stone. So gradual you don't notice until suddenly there's a canyon where solid ground used to be. My name is Elena Ruiz Calderón. In here they call me La Viuda Silenciosa, the silent widow. Not because I don't talk. I talk plenty. But because I killed my husband so quietly. Nobody knew until he was already dead. 37 years of marriage ended not with a bang, but with a whimper, with bleach mixed into his evening tea. I'm 73 years old. I was convicted of second-degree murder. The victim was my husband, Roberto Calderón, 76 years old, retired warehouse supervisor, father of our 2 children, grandfather of 4. The man I poisoned slowly over the course of 8 months until his body simply gave up. They gave me 30 years. I'll be 95 before I'm even eligible for parole. The public defender told me I should feel lucky, that if they'd proven premeditation, if they'd gotten first degree, I'd have gotten life without possibility. Lucky? That's the word she used. I suppose she's right. I'm lucky to die in a cell instead of dying in that house. But let me start where it really begins, not with the bleach, not with Roberto's death, but with a girl in Fresno who believed in fairy tales. I was born in 1952, daughter of farm workers, Mexican immigrants who picked grapes in the Central Valley until their backs gave out. I was the youngest of 6, 3 brothers, 2 sisters. We lived in a 2-bedroom house that always smelled like beans and diesel fuel, and too many bodies in too little space. My mother used to tell me, marry well, mija, marry a man with a steady job, a man who won't make you pick in the fields. That was her dream for me. Not education, not career, just a man who could provide. I met Roberto when I was 19. He was 22, working at a warehouse in town. Steady job, clean clothes. He had a car, a beat-up Chevy, but still, a car. He took me to the movies twice, brought flowers to my mother, asked my father's permission. We married in 1971. Small ceremony at the Catholic Church. I wore my sister's dress, altered to fit. Roberto wore a suit borrowed from his brother. We moved into a small apartment on the east side. 2 rooms. Shared bathroom down the hall, but it was ours. The first year was good. Or maybe I just remember it that way because of what came after. Roberto worked. I worked cleaning houses for white families in the nicer neighborhoods. We saved money, talked about buying a house, having children. Our first son, Miguel, was born in 1973, our second, David, in 1975. I stopped working to care for them. Roberto's salary was enough if we were careful, if we didn't waste, if I clipped coupons and bought day-old bread and made 1 chicken last 3 meals. Roberto was a good father in the beginning. He played with the boys, helped with baths. But as they grew, something shifted. He became harder, more demanding. The boys had to be quiet when he was home, had to eat what was served without complaint, had to address him as sir. I told myself it was normal, that fathers were supposed to be disciplinarians, that respect was important. But sometimes I'd see the fear in my son's eyes when they heard his car in the driveway. Sometimes I'd catch them flinching when he raised his voice. He never hit them. I need to say that clearly. Roberto never hit our children, but there are other ways to hurt, other ways to make someone small. With me, he was different, not violent, not in the way people usually mean. He never raised a fist, never shoved me, never left bruises the neighbors could see. But he had other tools, words mainly, constant commentary on everything I did. The house wasn't clean enough. The food was too salty or too bland. I was spending too much or not managing the money properly. I was too fat, too thin, too lazy, too fussy. Other men's wives work and keep a perfect house, Elena. What do you do all day? I'd explain. The laundry, the cooking, the cleaning, the children, the shopping, the bills. He'd wave it away. Excuses. You've gotten lazy, comfortable. So I worked harder, woke earlier, stayed up later, kept the house spotless, cooked his favorite meals, lost weight. But it was never enough. The criticism never stopped. The goalpost always moved. By the 1980s, the boys were in school. I took a part-time job as a home health aide. Extra money, I thought. Roberto approved. We needed it for the mortgage on the small house we'd finally bought. But now I was working and keeping the house perfect. 8 hours caring for elderly clients. Then home to cook and clean and tend to Roberto's needs. He never helped. Not with cooking or cleaning or shopping. That's women's work, he'd say if I asked. I work all day. I need to rest. And I did work all day. But somehow my work didn't count, didn't earn rest, didn't earn appreciation. The boys noticed as they got older, Miguel especially. When he was 16, he confronted his father after Roberto spent an entire dinner criticizing the meal I'd spent 3 hours preparing. Dad, that's enough. Mom worked hard on this. Roberto's face went dark. Don't you talk back to me. This is between your mother and me. It's not between anyone. You're just being mean. Roberto stood up. For a moment, I thought he might hit Miguel. Instead, he pointed at the door. Get out. Go to your room. Miguel looked at me. I should have stood with him. Should have told Roberto he was right. Instead, I lowered my eyes. Go on, mijo. It's okay. Miguel went, but something in his eyes changed that night. A hardness, a disappointment. In his father, yes, but also in me. Both boys left as soon as they could. Miguel joined the military at 18. David went to community college in San Francisco and never moved back. They called on holidays, visited occasionally, but I could feel the distance. They'd escaped, and I was still there. Roberto retired in 2007. I thought maybe things would get better. Maybe with time at home, he'd relax, soften. We could finally be companions instead of warden and prisoner. I was wrong. Retirement made him worse. Now he was home all day, monitoring everything, timing how long I took at the grocery store, questioning every purchase, following me from room to room with commentary. You missed a spot. That's not how you fold. Towels. Why are you watching that garbage on TV? I developed a nervous habit of apologizing. Sorry, I'll fix it. Sorry, you're right. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Dozens of times a day. For existing, for breathing too loud, for being there. My friends from church stopped inviting me to things. I always said no anyway. Roberto didn't like me going out, didn't like me gossiping with those busybodies. Eventually they stopped asking. I became invisible outside the house, and inside it I was just a target. The real breaking point came in 2015. I was 63. Roberto was 66. We'd been married 44 years. My sister called. Our mother was dying. hospice care in Bakersfield. Could I come stay with her for the final days? I asked Roberto. He said no, said we couldn't afford it, said I was needed at home, said my mother had other daughters who could handle it. I went anyway. First time in our marriage, I directly disobeyed him. I drove to Bakersfield and stayed 3 days, held my mother's hand as she passed, helped my sisters with the funeral arrangements. When I came home, Roberto wouldn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Complete silence. He'd leave rooms when I entered, wouldn't eat the food I cooked, communicated through notes left on the counter. When he finally spoke again, it was to tell me, if you ever defy me like that again, I'll make sure you regret it. I was 63 years old, and my husband was threatening me because I attended my mother's deathbed. Something broke in me that day. Or maybe it had been breaking for years, and that was just when I noticed. I started thinking about leaving, looked up information about divorce, about women's shelters, about senior housing, but every path seemed impossible. We had no savings. Roberto controlled everything and spent freely on himself while denying me basic things. Social Security wouldn't be enough to live on. Alone. My sons were busy with their own lives. Where would I go? What would I do? So I stayed, and the years crawled by. 64, 65, 66, each day the same. Wake up, serve Roberto, endure his criticism, go to bed, repeat. I started having fantasies. Not violent ones at first, just absence. I'd imagine he had a heart attack or a stroke, that he died in his sleep peacefully, and I'd wake up a widow, free. I felt guilty about those thoughts, prayed for forgiveness. But they kept coming, more detailed, more frequent. In early 2023, Roberto developed a cough. Doctors said it was bronchitis. Gave him antibiotics. The cough persisted for weeks. He complained constantly, blamed me somehow. The house was too dusty, the air too dry. I wasn't taking care of him properly. I nursed him dutifully, made him tea with honey, bought a humidifier, washed the sheets daily. And while I was doing all this, the thought came, what if he didn't get better? I pushed it away, but it came back, persistent, insistent. I started researching. Just out of curiosity, I told myself, looking up symptoms of various illnesses, reading about what caused them, what made them worse. That's when I learned about bleach, how small amounts consumed regularly could cause internal damage that looked like natural illness, stomach problems, nausea, weakness, eventually organ failure. I told myself I was just learning, just reading. I'd never actually do anything, but I bought bleach, industrial strength, kept it under the sink with the other cleaning supplies. Normal, innocent. And then one morning in March, while making Roberto's coffee, I poured a tiny amount in, just a few drops, barely anything, just to see. He didn't notice, drank it normally, complained about something unrelated, went about his day. Nothing happened, no immediate reaction. I felt relieved and disappointed at the same time, but I did it again the next day. And the next, tiny amounts, imperceptible, in his coffee, his tea, his juice, never enough to taste, never enough to cause immediate alarm. After 2 weeks, he started complaining about his stomach, said he felt off, nauseous. I expressed concern, made him bland foods, suggested he see the doctor. The doctor ran tests, found nothing conclusive, said it might be stress or age-related digestion issues, prescribed antacids. I continued. Small doses, consistent, patient. By June, Roberto was noticeably weaker, losing weight, complaining of pain, more tests. The doctors were puzzled, talked about possible cancers, more scans, more appointments. I drove him to every one, sat in waiting rooms, held his hand when he was scared, and continued poisoning him. I know how that sounds, monstrous, and maybe it was, but in those moments I didn't feel like a monster. I felt like someone finally doing something, taking action, controlling my own fate for the first time in 50 years. Roberto got sicker through the summer, lost 40 pounds, could barely keep food down. The doctors admitted him to the hospital in August for observation and more aggressive testing. They still couldn't figure it out. His organs were failing, but they couldn't identify why. It looked like accelerated aging, like his body was just giving up. He came home in September. Hospice was arranged. The doctors told us, he probably had weeks, maybe a month or two. My sons came to visit, sat by their father's bedside. Miguel cried. David held Roberto's hand. They told him they loved him. He told them he was proud of them. Nobody told me they loved me. Nobody asked how I was doing. I was just the wife, the caretaker, invisible as always. Roberto died on October 14th, 2023, at home, in our bed. I was holding his hand. His last words were, "Elena, I'm sorry I was so hard on you." I said, "It's okay, rest now." He closed his eyes and stopped, breathing. I called hospice. They came and pronounced him, called the mortuary. My sons arrived within hours. We made arrangements. Small funeral, cremation. He'd wanted his ashes scattered in the ocean. For 3 months, I was a widow. I lived alone in our house. My sons checked on me occasionally, but were busy with their own lives. Friends from church brought casseroles and condolences. I felt nothing. No grief. No relief. Just emptiness. Like I'd spent so long being erased that there was nothing left to feel with. Then in January 2024, the call came. The medical examiner's office. There'd been a routine review of Roberto's case. Something about the pattern of organ failure. They wanted to run additional tests on tissue samples. A week later, 2 detectives showed up at my door. They'd found evidence of caustic poisoning, bleach consumption over an extended period. They were investigating it as a potential homicide. I should have gotten, a lawyer should have said nothing, but I was 72 years old and tired. So tired. I told them everything, the daily doses, the months of poisoning, how I'd done it, why I'd done it. They recorded it all. I was arrested that day, charged with first-degree murder. The prosecutor argued it was premeditated, that the slow poisoning proved planning and intent. My public defender tried to argue diminished capacity, long-term abuse, learned helplessness, that I'd been driven to it by decades of psychological torture. But the prosecution painted me as a calculating killer, a woman who smiled at her husband's bedside while poisoning him, who played the devoted wife while committing murder. The jury couldn't agree on first degree. Too many questions about premeditation. Had I really planned it from the start, or had it evolved? Eventually they compromised on second-degree murder. 30 years. At 73, it's a life sentence by another name. My sons testified, not for me, not against me exactly, but they told the court about their childhood, about their father's harshness, about how they'd escaped and left me behind. Miguel said something that stays with me. I understand why she did it. I don't forgive it, but I understand. They don't visit. They write occasionally, obligatory letters about their lives. They're children, my grandchildren who I'll never really know. They're polite, distant. I'm an embarrassment, a killer. Here in prison, I'm treated with a strange sort of respect. The younger women see me as a cautionary tale or a hero, depending on their own stories. The guards are professional, but wary. I'm a senior citizen who committed murder. I don't fit their categories. I spend my days in the library. I've read more books in 2 years here than in my entire previous life. I take classes. I've learned to paint. Small watercolors of flowers and landscapes I remember from childhood. The chaplain asks if I've found God again. I tell her I never lost him. But I'm not sure he hasn't lost me. Do I regret it? That's what everyone wants to know. I regret that it came to that. I regret that in 50 years of marriage, poisoning him seemed like my only option. I regret that I couldn't save myself any other way. But do I regret that he's dead? That his voice no longer fills my head with criticism? That I don't wake up dreading the day ahead? I don't know how to answer that honestly. What I do know is this. I traded one prison for another. In the house, I was imprisoned by duty and fear and decades of conditioning. Here, I'm imprisoned by concrete and bars and a 30-year sentence. But here, nobody tells me I'm worthless. Nobody monitors my every move with contempt. Nobody makes me apologize for existing. So which prison is worse? I genuinely don't know. The psychiatrist says I show signs of battered woman syndrome, even though Roberto never hit me. She says psychological abuse is just as damaging, that I was trapped in a cycle I couldn't escape. Maybe she's right. The labels don't change anything. Roberto is still dead. I'm still here. The years are still gone. If I could talk to him now, I don't know what I'd say. Maybe. You were right about one thing. I was lazy. Lazy about protecting myself. Lazy about demanding better. Lazy about leaving. Or maybe I'd say nothing. Maybe there's nothing left to say to a man who spent 37 years teaching me I had no voice. My granddaughter wrote me once, the oldest. She's 14. The letter was short. Grandma, I don't understand what you did, but Mom says you were brave. I hope you're okay. I cried for an hour after reading it, not because she called me brave. I'm not brave. Brave women leave. They fight back. They refuse to disappear. I cried because she called me Grandma, because someone in my family still claimed me. The other inmates ask, sometimes, do you think you'll make it to parole, Elena? I tell them probably not. My heart is weak. My blood pressure is high. I'll likely die here. But you know what? I'll die with my name. Elena Ruiz Calderón, not Roberto's wife, not the silent woman who disappeared into servitude, just Elena. The guards are signaling. Rec time is over. Time to return to my cell, my small space with my narrow bed, and my watercolor paintings taped to the wall. There are worse places to die. I spent decades in one. My name is Elena Ruiz Calderón. I am 73 years old. I poisoned my husband slowly over 8 months. I will die in prison. But every morning I wake up and nobody tells me I'm worthless. And somehow that's enough.